Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain, who is the director of the Westfield Athenaeum. I'm Mark Auerbach from On the Mark and Artsbeat, and I get this opportunity to join Guy on an occasional morning to talk about what's going on at the Athenaeum and what's going on in the world of art and history here in Western Massachusetts. We've got a guest coming on board later on, but first we're going to get a chance for Guy and me to catch up on what's going on. So how are you, Guy McLain?
Very good, very good. And it's nice to be here this morning again.
Yeah, so how's your summer going so far?
So far, great. It's so nice to be able to get out there and go to arts events again. What a wonderful treat. I just did not realize before the pandemic how much I had missed going out to museums, going to concerts, things like that. So it's really nice. I've been trying to take advantage of every opportunity as the pandemic winds down and we can get back out there again.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I mean, I've gone back to reviewing shows, and I've been to two shows, both in the Berkshires, and I'm headed to one down at Goodspeed Musicals and down on the river this weekend, which has been great. But I also had a chance to go out. You know, it's seeing friends, particularly those in the arts community, that have all been kind of like sequestered, and they're now out and about, and there's such a joy to either go have a cup of coffee or go see an exhibit or all of that. So it's great to be back, as they say.
Yes, yes, it's great. Same thing for me. I have enjoyed really connecting back to a lot of my musician friends. The musicians, I don't think people really realize just how difficult this last year has been for musicians. Many musicians have lost more than half of their income. A couple of people I know lost more than 3/4 of their income over the last year because they just couldn't perform, and so they are really excited to get back out there themselves, and it's tough. I encourage everybody, if there are live music events this summer that you have an opportunity to go to, I really encourage you to do so, not only for the joy of going to a wonderful concert or a performance of some kind, but also just to support the artists, the musicians out there who are struggling so with this.
Yeah, the music, the theater community was devastated, but the music community was devastated even more. But at least Tanglewood is back up and running. Seven Hours concerts, which to me is my personal favorite of some of the chamber music groups that are out and about, and they're in Worthington. They're back. The Talcott Mountain Music Festival, which is the Hartford Symphony Summer Home in Simsbury, is back. Sadly to say, the only performing group that is not back at this point is the Springfield Symphony Orchestra, and from what I've read and heard, things are in dire straits there. They're a typical example of what happened to the music community during the pandemic.
Yes, and I think the Springfield Symphony, what's going on with the Springfield Symphony and the problems they're having may be repeated across the country. Many smaller symphonies that have limited budgets, that don't have a lot of endowment money to support them, are in real trouble in this country. And that's another thing that I'll encourage our listeners to do is support your local symphony orchestra, because they need it right now. It's a desperate times.
It definitely is. And you think about these musicians who might play with more than one orchestra because they're freelancers, and then they lose that opportunity, and they lose their church gigs or their teaching gigs because teaching went to Zoom, and churches weren't holding in-church events. And so they might have a group that would play in a restaurant or a bar, or weddings and bar mitzvahs and all of that, and that was gone for over a year. So this community needs a lot of support.
Right. It was a perfect storm. My friends always, if one opportunity fell through, there was always something else they could do. If they couldn't, if a certain concert venue went out of business, there were many other opportunities. But this last year, all of them dried up, and there was nowhere for them to turn. So yeah, this is a very difficult situation, I think, and I feel like it's so important for us to support symphony orchestras and chamber groups, especially in the classical music world, because the classical music world doesn't quite get the support of other musical venues, and yet they play such an important role in our communities, education-wise, this sort of thing.
Yeah, they certainly do. So the Athenaeum here in Westfield is back up and running, so to speak, full time and full tilt. What are some of the programs that you've brought back for the summer?
Yeah, we're really excited. We're now finally open, completely open. We're open 6 days a week now, and we have hours in the evening. We have hours on Saturday. We're very excited about that, and we have launched our summer reading program that'll go through the summer, which is a great opportunity to come into the library, get involved with other readers in book discussion groups. The children's programs are great. We've got crafts for the kids, crafts for teens. We've got various other activities for the children. We're launching very soon a program for the kids to come in and decorate the sidewalks by the Athenaeum, to paint the sidewalks, which we think will be a real fun program for the kids. So there's all kinds of activities like that. But we're really excited too that in the fall we want to reintroduce concerts at the Athenaeum. We think this is just as we were talking, we want to support musicians, and so we are working fast and furious toward developing a program to have music events at the Athenaeum. We have a great space in the Lang Auditorium for performances. We also think that there might be opportunities. The fall, the weather's kind of changing. We think we might also be able to do something outside too, but we certainly have the Lang Auditorium space to work with, and so we're really excited about that.
What is the most exciting thing that, since we chatted about it a month ago, what's the most exciting thing that you've been able to go out and do now that there are no restrictions?
Yeah. Going back to the museums. I've got a list of museums I want to visit in the next 2 or 3 months, and I've started the last several weeks. Every weekend I'm heading to a museum because I just think it's so great to be able to get in and see the art again. Seeing art on the internet is not the same. I want to see it in person, and there's great exhibits opening up in a lot of different places. Mass MoCA up in North Adams is opening some great exhibits. The Clark Art Museum has some interesting exhibits planned for the summer. I recently went to Chesterwood, which is in Stockbridge. They've got a great sculpture show that they're starting there. So the museums that also went through a really difficult time this last year are reopening now. And again, they need our support as well, because it was tough. No admissions revenue for many museums for almost a year. It made it very, very difficult for the museums.
And I would assume that it was difficult for the Westfield Athenaeum too, because you were providing a variety of services, but it was all like if you wanted to borrow a book, you had to order it, and then it was curbside as opposed to in-house.
Yes, I've never, in all my years of working in the library museum world, I've never seen a crisis that was this acute. And it was something that was totally unexpected. We had never faced anything like this. But our staff, one of the things that was great about our staff is they really stepped up to the plate, came up with good solutions, because library services were still needed. That even though we were in lockdown, though the services that libraries offer were still very much needed by the community. And so we organized this program called Library to Go, in which people could call us, tell us what they needed, and maybe it was just simply a book that they wanted to read. But also, too, it was people working on resumes or needing documents, copies of documents, and they didn't have that ability at home. So we worked out ways of being able to provide these services to people remotely. And it worked very, very well. I was just shocked that we were able to do this, but we provided 60,000 items for people during the lockdown. 60,000 items were checked out or utilized by our patrons during the lockdown, which I think is a remarkable accomplishment given the conditions. And remember, the librarians were also dealing with their own issues as we all faced the issues with the pandemic. They had to deal with those issues, but they stepped up to the plate and continued to provide a variety of services. Who would have thought, with a building completely closed, that they could have done that? But they did a great job with that.
Yeah, and I just can't imagine. I mean, the Athenaeum is a library and a museum and an exhibition space and a gallery and a concert venue. But I just wonder how some of these museums were able to function because they wanted to keep their staffs employed and they needed to maintain the art that they have. People don't realize that you have to keep the heating on and you have to keep the humidity to a certain level so the paintings and the sculptures don't deteriorate. And yet they were able to produce programming on video and everything else to keep the community engaged. I thought about friends of mine that wanted to go to France and had planned to go to the Louvre, and I just couldn't imagine somebody at the Louvre pulling the Mona Lisa out so that you could drive by and see it while you were in town and then putting it back. But when you have famous art like that, it has to be protected.
Yeah, and that's something I don't think people realize. You go into a museum, all the paintings are on the wall, everything looks nice, but there's a lot of work that goes into keeping those paintings in good condition. Conservation, you need experts in conservation for paintings and sculptures. And you're right, keeping the building, keeping climate control conditions where they are. So that was the thing that many museums faced is they had no revenue coming in, but yet they still needed to maintain their buildings. They still needed to monitor the collections for conservation needs, this sort of thing. That problem didn't go away. Those are costly expenses that museums incur on a regular basis. That didn't stop, but yet the revenue did, and so it was very, very difficult. We faced this at the Athenaeum. We basically had to close our art gallery and our history museum. The 2 out of 3 of the components we offered were closed down for the total time, and they still are closed. We are gearing up to open up our art exhibits in September, but that's something that is still not available because we needed time to be able to bring the collections out and start showing art again and start concerts back and that sort of thing. There's a lot of planning that goes into all these things, and it's very, very difficult. Many museums have really suffered through this process.
I'm sure they have, like you have art, but you also have artifacts, things of significance that go back for centuries that have something to do with Westfield. How do you protect them? Do you have climate control? Do you have to wrap them in certain things during a pandemic? Take a painting down and protect it?
Yeah, you certainly do. One of the things that we had to be very careful about is maintaining building conditions during the pandemic. There was a real a desire by many people to say, we don't have the money, so let's turn down the heat. Let's not, keep things going like that. But that, of course, we couldn't do that. We had to maintain proper temperature and humidity conditions and this sort of thing. And then also, too, artifacts. A 200-year-old artifact needs constant monitoring for care to make sure that damage is not occurring because of climate change or something like that. So we had to continue to monitor the collections. And then also the work of processing new collections. New collections were still coming in. People were still donating things to us because that kind of thing continued to go on. So we have to wrap many objects in acid-free paper. We have to make sure that we can't just wrap them in anything. We have to make sure that it's acid-free. All those kinds of conditions had to be met. For instance, photographs can't be put in plastic sleeves. That's not good for them. The chemicals in plastics are very bad for photographs. We have to put them in special substances called mylar. Things like that we had to continue to do, even though the building was shut down and we had reduced financial resources to work with.
So people bring you artifacts from their homes, like they're cleaning out the attic and they say, well, this dish was made like in 1912 in Westville. We're going to give it to the Athenaeum. Are you the guy that decides what's worth keeping and what's junk?
Yes, I'm quite often involved with that process. We do have an archivist on staff that assists me in that process, but many times I have to get involved in making a decision on what comes in, because one of the problems for any institution, every institution has limited resources. We can't take everything, so we have to be very specific in what we take. For instance, we're very focused on Westfield history. That's, of course, the main part of our mission, and so we give priority to Westfield artifacts. But even things that were manufactured in Westfield or made in Westfield, we don't necessarily take if they don't meet museum standards. It has to be a museum quality artifact.
So that their super truck of artifacts arrives at the front door, and at the back door is the truck going to Goodwill for the stuff that y'all are not going to take.
Well, we try to avoid taking things in and then turning around and sending them to Goodwill. We try to avoid that because that's a complicated process in itself. We take seriously any donation that comes to us. We take it very seriously that the person who owned this item and is giving it to us care deeply about this, and we do too, anything that's of historical significance. And so if we don't feel that it's appropriate for our collection, we try to help those people find another place that might take that object. So we try not to take things in the first place that don't fit into our collection. But we understand that these are valuable and historically important artifacts, so we try to help them find another home if we're not the appropriate place for it.
What are one of the or two of the most surprising things that you've got in the archives that came from Westfield that at some point you'll put on display?
Well, we're really excited to show a whip making machine. You know, of course, we're in Whip City, and the whip industry was, of course, what made Westfield in the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution took off in Westfield, as it did with most New England communities, and the whip industry was Westfield's specialty industry. In the 19th century, most towns tended to specialize in one or two product lines.
So we're talking about horse and buggy whips.
Horse and buggy whips. That's exactly correct.
Okay.
And at one time, literally hundreds of thousands of whips were made every year in Westfield. Every year, it was the largest manufacturer of whips in the world. They came out of Westfield, and so we have a whip making machine that we're going to put on display. So we're really excited about that. We also, another thing, there's a marble quarry here that made a very interesting, very unique kind of marble, and we actually have a piece of the marble that was made into a marble stand, possibly to put a flower pot or maybe a sculpture piece on top of, and it's a really interesting piece from Westfield marble. So we're going to put that on display. We thought that was really exciting.
I'm curious, where was the quarry?
It was down in an area that was close to where the South Hadley Canal is. It's kind of hard to explain. I'd have to pull out maps and everything to kind of give you a sense of that. But it's one of the things that's kind of been forgotten in Westfield. As many people come in and say, "Oh, I don't understand why." Whips are, why this is the whip city. It's been forgotten, and the story of whips is also very important today. It's a very relevant story today because it's about technology. Whips, of course, were very important in a time when people relied on horses for transportation, and so it was made for that. When the automobile started to come in around 1900, of course, that really affected the whip industry. And so it shows you how new technologies can really change industries. Westfield had to completely transform its economic base in literally a period of about 20 years in the first 20 years of the 20th century because of the decline of the whip industry. So it's a story. We see this today. Technologies becoming dated, and so we think it's not just a story that's interesting to tell about what Westfield was like in the 19th century. We think it's a story that's very relevant to technological change that we see today.
That's incredible. I had no idea. Were the forefathers innovators when they realized that they weren't going to be making their money at whips? Did they turn to other things quickly, or did they fall behind?
Well, there were difficult times of transition. I mean, let's face it. When an industry that, of course, was this extensive, and you have to remember, literally hundreds of Westfield workers worked in the whip industry, and then of course think about all the people supporting those workers. Store owners and other workers that were connected to the whip industry. So when that started to decline, that was a very, very difficult transition. One of the things that was good about it for Westfield is Westfield did have some other opportunities to connect to some other industries. Cars and motorcycles were actually made in Westfield at one time, so there was that diversity. But bicycles were a big product. The famous Columbia bicycle was made here in Westfield, so that was a really good transition. Those were good transition industries, but they didn't really replace the whip industry. It was a difficult process for the city to get over that.
Oh, wow. So we're talking with Guy McLain. This is the Athenaeum Spotlight program with Guy McLain. We're going to take a brief break to acknowledge the underwriters that make this program possible. When we come back, we'll talk with Will Baczek from the William Baczek Fine Arts in Northampton about some of the contemporary artists that make Western Massachusetts great and some of the gallery exhibitions up and coming. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Westfield Bank. For more than 160 years, Westfield Bank has been an important community presence and commercial leader in the Pioneer Valley. With convenient full banking services in Westfield, West Springfield, East Longmeadow, Agawam, Feeding Hills, Springfield, Southwick, as well as Enfield and Granby, Connecticut, visit us on the web at westfieldbank.org.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone, to Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. My pal, Guy McLain. I'm Mark Auerbach, the host of Arts Beat and On the Mark here. And in our second half hour today, we're going to be chatting with Will Baczek from William Baczek Fine Arts in Northampton, celebrating 25 years of presenting contemporary artists, many of them from Western New England and Western Massachusetts, among Jamie Young, Susan McCullough, and others. Will, it's good to see you. You need to turn your volume on, Will.
I am unmuted.
Okay, it's good to see you, Will.
Good to see you too, Mark. Hi, Guy.
Hi, how you doing?
So,
Good, thanks.
25 years. I did the math after we talked yesterday. I went on your website and realized that that's a pretty good milestone for a local gallery that primarily showcases people who got their start here in Western New England.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I kind of joke that 25 years is kind of like dog years in the gallery world. It's a long time. And when we first opened, we did show exclusively local artists and sold to local clients. But over the course of time, we now represent artists both locally and from Canada, Asia, Italy, Latvia. So over time, we've grown to have an international roster of artists.
And when you started the gallery, Northampton was becoming on the map, kind of like the cultural center of Western Massachusetts. People talked about it, got written up all over the country in magazines as the place to go for a renaissance in the arts, between the galleries and the restaurants and live performances and what was happening at the Academy of Music. So you're sort of a forefather in that renaissance of downtown Northampton.
I think I'm kind of generation maybe one and a half. The restaurant renaissance kind of happened with Beardsley's and early Fitzwillies in the late 70s and early 80s. And then music with the Iron Horse. I mean, Miles Davis played at the Iron Horse. So the Iron Horse was definitely a national destination. The literature as well. You know, we have Pulitzer Prize winning authors and famous children's books authors in the area too. For the visual arts, mid to late 70s, early 80s, primarily with the group that's referred to as the Valley Realists.
And who are some of the artists that are nationally or internationally known that can trace their roots back in some level to Northampton?
Well, that group kind of coalesced around artist Gregory Gillespie, who died about 15 years ago. And that was a group of realist painters. There was Gregory Gillespie. Scott Pryor is a very well-known local artist who we've been showing since the day we opened. Scott's one of my inaugural artists. Randy Deal shows at the Michelson Gallery. Robin Friedenfeld, who we represent. Jane Lund, who we represent. Fran Gillespie, Gregory Gillespie's first wife. That's the core group of realist painters who came together in the Valley in the late 70s.
Plus there was a lot of crafts that developed in Northampton as well.
That's a really good point. Leslie Ferrin and other potters, Mara Superior, Donna McGee, Megan Hart, those were excellent potters. They opened up Pinch Pottery on Main Street. Pinch Pottery originally opened in the basement of Thorns, moved to a Main Street location, and now functions as the Ferrin Gallery on the campus of Mass MoCA out in North Adams.
So, in your estimation, I mean, Northampton has had its ups and its downs, and people have talked lately about the empty storefronts and that kind of came around the pandemic. But do you think Northampton is back on the rise now that things are reopening?
That's a good question. I get asked that a lot. I most recently got asked that by someone who was thinking of moving to Northampton from the Boston area. And she was a little fretful and she said, you know, is Northampton okay? And I said, I think a better question is, what is the town's ability to recover? Nobody's okay right now. Everybody's getting over a year or two of, to use the word difficult is an understatement. But I think it's more important to think about what the town's ability to recover is. We have 5 major international colleges in this area. We're right on the Interstate 91. We are a destination. We have a very vital downtown, very good restaurant scenes. Like all other towns of this size, small city size, there are issues that need to be dealt with. And that's a whole nother interview and probably a lot longer. But I think it is important to consider what Northampton's ability to recover is, and that's very strong.
That's good to know. How did you get involved in the gallery business?
Well, I have a pretty shallow skill set. I went to college for art. I was a fine art major. And after college, I did what a lot of college graduates do. I became a waiter. I waited tables at Fitzwillies and tended bar there. And I got a part-time job as a picture framer at the old Pierce's Art Store that was on Upper Main Street. Pierce's became assimilated into the Guild Art Center. I moved there to work, and it was at the Guild Art Center that the owner, Bill Muller, decided to create the Hart Gallery and asked me to be the director there. I was the director there for about 10 years, and after that, I opened up William Baczek Fine Arts. in February of 1996.
And I want to think that was, around that time, you were one of the first art gallery people to really support public broadcasting, because I was at WFCR at the time, and that's where we first met. And you were one of the first to not only underwrite programs and exhibits at your own gallery, but to really focus on making sure that the entire arts community supported public broadcasting and supported bettering the community. So you've got quite the track record of not only building a gallery, but building a community.
That's nice of you to say. Thank you.
But-
well, like I said, when we opened, we did represent exclusively local artists, and the internet was around, but it didn't function as with the commercial viability that it does now. So representing local artists, it was important to support local television stations. We supported lots of AIDS charities. We supported animal shelters. And then with the advent of the internet, of course, everything in retail changed. Galleries are no different from any of that. And so now the internet accounts for 70% of my gallery's business. So a lot.
People go online to look at the exhibits?
Yeah, well, let's say, Mark, you're a client from Italy. Let's say you live in Italy. I have artists from Milan, Italy. So those clients know that artist's work. It is a little confounding to think, gee, I wouldn't want to buy a painting from a place literally across the ocean from someone I've never seen. But because we represent artists internationally, they have international clientele. We just shipped a painting to Dubai this summer to some of an artist from Latvia, and that client from Dubai saw her work in Europe. So that's, in that way, the internet is my best friend.
Wow. Are there any artists that you discovered that and exhibited that became international that you were surprised about?
I don't think so much that I was surprised about, because if I took them onto the gallery, I had feelings that they were good and capable and that their potential was excellent. I took on an artist who now lives in Portland, Oregon, Eric Wirth, when he was a grad student at the Art Institute of Chicago. But it wasn't student work. To call his painting student work is like saying I have baby Mozart in my music class. He was very advanced. As a matter of fact, when he was a student, he was also part-timing as the technical illustrator for the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. So I picked him up as a student, gave him solo shows, and now he shows internationally and has 4 new paintings in our current summer group exhibition.
When you're running a gallery and setting up exhibits and then, having openings and all of that, plus running a business, how do you have time to go find other artists? Do they come to you or do you seek them out?
Both. Instagram, the internet. Also, for 10 years, we exhibited. My gallery went down to Miami during Art Basel Week, when there are literally 20 major art fairs happening in the city of Miami, the most famous of which is Art Basel in Miami. And then there are about 19, 20 other satellite fairs. We exhibited at the Pulse Art Fair, and I can have my booth here, and in the booth next door is a gallery from Milan. And that's actually how I became familiar with a street artist who we now represent from Milan. His name is El Gato Chimney, and he does these beautiful, surrealistic, allegorical watercolors that we ship all over the world.
Can I jump in and just ask, because I want to ask about the fact that you bring up Art Basel in Miami. There's a lot of controversy from what I hear in the gallery world about these art fairs because there's from what I've heard, and maybe you can elaborate on this. From what I've heard is a lot of smaller galleries have trouble competing with the major international galleries, and so it makes business very difficult for the smaller galleries, and that many smaller galleries have had to go out of business because of these big art fairs. How do you feel that these art galleries are a positive thing, or do you think that it is hurting the art gallery scene overall?
To do an art fair is very expensive, and depending on which art fair you apply to or get accepted to, it can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $200,000 for a booth. Now add to that shipping fees, insurance fees, framing fees, all of those fees. You're in for a lot of money. And if a gallery is in a financially vulnerable position, which a lot of us frequently are, you go to an art fair, you're pushing all your chips on the table. And that's a very risky thing to do. And like any other business, you have to be very careful when you push all your chips on the table, because you might not get a winning hand. And like every other business, yes, we are competing with the mega galleries. But the good thing about an art fair is it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're in that fair, and there's a real hierarchy, you try to apply to the best fairs so you can present yourself in as high quality a venue as possible. But now you are getting clients literally from all over the world. People fly in from all over the world to come to Miami during the first week of December to see art. So if you can get yourself there, and if you can present yourself in a professional and good way and show art that people want to collect, you've now introduced yourself to international clients that you're going to stay in contact with.
Did the art fair in Miami close during the pandemic? Will they have one this upcoming year in December?
Yeah, like everything else, everybody's ready to burst, and all of the art fairs have opened up their application process. So now is the time that people are going to apply. They get notified in late summer, they send their deposits in, and it is going to happen the first week of December.
I've heard that it's the place to go to really see a variety of things around, and it's very easy to get to. What are some of the other places that you go out and seek art or exhibit some of your artists?
We've done art fairs in New York City. We've done art fairs in Boston. And, I really love art. When I go on vacation, I go to the museums and I go to the galleries. I'm going to the Cape for 2 weeks, and Provincetown has an incredible art scene, a history of art since before the abstract expressionists. But there are very, very good galleries in Provincetown. You can see paintings of sunsets and waves, but you can also see art by contemporary artists who are showing internationally. And when I go away, for fun, I will go look at art.
What are some of the galleries around, let's say in the Berkshires, which is such an art hub for people? What are some of the exhibits, perhaps, in museums or galleries that you seek out when you go to the Berkshires for a day in the country?
Well, I like contemporary art, so of course I go to Mass MoCA. They have a long-term installation of a light artist named James Turrell, and to describe that kind of art will make people roll their eyes and think this is why I hate contemporary art. But when you go into this vast room and the walls start changing colors and things start changing slowly, and you literally lose sense of where your feet are, and the way he is able to manipulate light and create seemingly solid objects out of a simple beam of light, it really expands what you can think. Art doesn't necessarily need to be a nice painting of an apple sitting on a table. This guy deals with all of your senses, and Mass MoCA has done an incredible job.
I have to say, I went to see the Terrell exhibit a couple of weeks ago,
Did
and
you
it was
like it?
astounding. It was just amazing, and I recommend to everyone that has a chance to go up and see it, because you're absolutely right. Contemporary art has gone well beyond just the easel painting. And Terrell's works are a great example of that. When you go into those rooms and you're immersed in this light, the different lights and the different ways he manipulates light, it's an incredible experience, which I think is very, very interesting. And Mass Mocha, I think, specializes in putting together exhibits like that go beyond just the typical painting on the wall there. So I'm glad you
Absolutely.
mentioned that, because that was a very good. Think that's a very good exhibit.
Thank you.
I want to throw out something to both of you, gentlemen. You've got a great gallery, Will, in Northampton, and there are other, superlative museums in the area. Do we have the resources to train young artists to rise to an international level in our schools here, to maintain the artistic community?
In the current state, no. When I went to college, or when I went to high school, I grew up in Palmer, and Palmer High School had an absolutely renowned art department. We had a photography department with dark rooms. Our pottery department had 4 kilns, 14 potter wheels. Our printmaking department literally had a Heidelberg printing press. That's because under the Kennedy administration, there was a lot of money dedicated to the arts. Sadly, that's gone away. And every study that's done shows that the arts contribute to the vitality of the local economy, on a small level and on a great level. And so it's become much more difficult in an already difficult field to maintain a lifestyle and a business as an artist. And that's an important word, because being an artist is like any other job. You have to work at it. You have to work your way up the ladder, and you have to figure out how to financially make it feasible to continue doing it.
Now, Western Massachusetts is known as an arts community, and it's people constantly talk about the creative economy that actors, musicians, artists that make their living here in Western Mass or get the chance to live here for the quality of life and are successful because it's close to New York and Boston and stuff like that. If you took the art world outside of Northampton, let's say, and all the galleries shuttered, wouldn't that have a major economic impact on the future of the city?
Absolutely. Like I said, every study shows that a vital arts community contributes greatly to the overall success of a local economy. And whether that's in a small town or a medium-sized city like Northampton or a big city like New York, the arts contribute to the financial welfare of the community.
We are talking with Will Baczek from the William Baczek Fine Arts in Northampton, celebrating its 25th year. Guy McLain from the Westfield Athenaeum is here because this program is called Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. We're going to take a very quick break to acknowledge our underwriters that make programming like this possible on Westfield Community Programming, Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Community Radio. If you've missed a part of today's program or you want to play it again and again, you'll find it archived on YouTube on WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. Guy McLain is sitting here. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we will return after a couple of underwriting announcements, so don't go away.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies, rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Join me, Tina Gorman, each week from 6 to 8 a.m. for Wake Up Wednesday, when my guests and I discuss health, wellness, and lifestyle reimagined.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone, to Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. I'm Mark Auerbach, sitting in with him today. Will Baczek from William Baczek Fine Arts is our guest for this half hour. And if you've missed a part of this, we've been chatting about the 25th anniversary of Will's gallery in Northampton, some of the artists that he's represented, and the importance of art in our communities, not only because we want to make our communities a better place to live, but because the arts contribute so much economically to making our communities important. And certainly Northampton, where Will Baczek's Fine Art Gallery is located, would not be the town it is without the galleries and the performing arts scene that has made Northampton over a quarter century like the Mecca of the arts here in Western New England. So welcome back, everyone.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question. I of course, come out of the museum world, deal with art through museums. And one of the things that's very interesting, we've been talking about the economic aspect, but another thing that galleries do that I think is very important is when museums are trying to decide what to put into their museums, what artists are of the caliber that deserve to be represented and shown in museums, a lot of times we turn to galleries to find those artists. And one of the questions I want to raise, because from the museums, I've often wondered about this. How do you go about making the decisions you make in selecting the artists? Because of course, the galleries play it's a commercial operation, but it does play a very important cultural role in providing artists that wind up in museums. So I'm interested in your take on that.
It's a balancing act because I do have financial constraints. It is a commercial gallery. I'm not funded by the city. I'm not funded by grants. I'm not underwritten by anyone. I'm supported by my clients. And I've had some very generous long-term local clients and some very generous long-term international clients. As far as working with museums, we've sold paintings to the New Britain Museum of American Art. We've sold paintings to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. We just had a delivery this week. Scott Pryor had an excellent museum at the exhibition at the Cahoon Museum in Cotuit, Massachusetts. And I had the pleasure of calling up some of my clients and asking them if they would like to lend paintings that I sold them for a museum exhibition. So I have to balance what I like, what I think is good, what I think is new and people haven't seen yet, and what I think might sell and keep me open so that I can keep doing it.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're facing right now at the Athenaeum. We have as you know, we have an art gallery there, the Rand Art Gallery, and we like to show artists. But one of the things, as we start to get ready to reopen that gallery, one of the difficult things that we're going through right now is trying to locate artists that we think have the quality level that deserve to be put on exhibit. There's only so many shows we can put up in a given year or whatever, and it's a very difficult process. So I realize the problems you're in. So you can see there was a little bit of selfish motivation for asking that question, because it's a difficult process. But I think it's an important process, and I think it's something that maybe not too many people are aware of, is that it's difficult making decisions about artists. And it takes a lot of study and work. And I think gallery owners play a very important role in finding artists who are doing original, very interesting work. When you first started your gallery, did you feel that there was a group of artists in the Western Massachusetts area that you could really tap into and develop that group, or did you feel that you had to go outside the region to bring in artists?
When I first opened, I give so much credit and gratitude to Scott Pryor, who was a very established, very well collected by corporations, by private citizens, and also by museums. And Scott, I worked with for many years prior to opening my own gallery. And when I opened my doors, he said that he would exhibit with me. And it made a lot easier for other artists to decide that they would take a risk and join a new gallery, because, you know, as we know, the rate of attrition of any new business, never mind something that seems like such a folly as an art gallery, it's a risky business. And because Scott showed his support by giving me excellent first, you know, fresh out of the studio paintings, it made it a lot easier for other artists to take that risk. And your point is excellent. I tell artists, I have to turn a lot of very good artists away. And I say, I only have 12 months and 4 walls. That's tough competition to get on the walls. And it's like that for museums, especially.
Will, how long in advance do you plan an exhibit of artists? So you see somebody's art that you'd like to exhibit. How long from that point till it gets on the wall?
2 or 3 years we plan in advance. I'm right now scheduling for 2024 and 2025. And as I get older, I think, how many more of these cycles do I have, ahead of me? But if let's say it takes an artist anywhere from 1 week to 2 months to create a painting, and we need anywhere from between 10 and 30 paintings for an exhibition, that's at least a year of their life dedicated to making paintings just for one exhibition. And most of the artists that I exhibit show internationally, so they have 2 or 3 other galleries that they have to provide work for. So both galleries and artists plan at least 2, 3, 4, 5 years in advance.
And I think something that maybe people don't really understand is you see a work, let's say a bowl of apples by a particular artist. It's a one of a kind. It's not like they've created one for your gallery and one for a gallery in New York and one to hang at the Westfield Athenaeum at the same time. So it's very labor intensive.
That's right. And again, that's why the internet is my friend, because someone can see an artist who shows in 2 or 3 different galleries, but if they love one particular painting, that's where they have to go for it. A couple months ago, I sold a few paintings off of Instagram. The gallery's Instagram, WB Fine Arts, we have 11,000 followers, 10,900 something followers. I'm not sure in 25 years if 11,000 people have walked through my gallery, but every time I post a painting, 11,000 people see it. A few of my artists have over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Wow. Every time they post an artwork, 100,000 people see it. I think Guy would be very happy to have 100,000 people come see an exhibition at the museum. And so it's part of our job to get that artwork out there, not only on the walls of our physical space, but on the internet and virtually as well.
Yeah, we would be very pleased if we got that many people to come to our exhibits at the Athenaeum. That would be very nice.
Yes. Yeah, so Will, if people are interested in seeing your artists and looking at your stuff, you're on Instagram, but what other social media platforms are you on? And I know you have a rather robust website.
Thanks. Our website, all of our social media is WB Fine Arts. We have a Facebook page. We have an excellent website. Our website is up to the minute. Every time you go on it, there's new work. It's fresh. We work very hard at our website to keep it interesting. We have our Instagram account. My gallery has a YouTube channel, also WB Fine Arts. We have interviews with artists. We have studio visits with artists, and we try to provide on YouTube exposure to artists that, in addition to seeing their work on the walls of my gallery, YouTube can function as providing something new and different that people don't get to see in the gallery. And who doesn't love to visit an artist's studio and get, to peek behind the curtain and see how it's done?
And now that we're sort of in a post-pandemic phase, is the gallery open on regular hours?
Yeah, we were allowed to reopen June 9th of 2020. Of course, not many people were venturing out, but I was here every day. I opened the doors. That was a little over a year ago. I don't think anybody's back to normal. I don't think we even know what that word means anymore, but we are open normal business hours, Tuesday through Sunday. The galleries close on Monday, but we're open 6 days a week.
Will, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining Guy and myself. It's really been a pleasure chatting. It's been too long since we've seen each other in person.
I know.
I'll have to come up and check out the gallery, but in the meantime, congratulations on 25 years. I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up another program of Athenaeum Spotlight with Guy McLain. I'm just sitting in today. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. We've been broadcasting from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. This program will be heard on 89.5 FM WSKB and Westfield's Community Programming Channel 15. If you've missed a part of today's program, you can certainly go find it on WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. And we'll be back in approximately 3 weeks with another edition of Athenaeum Spotlight. And on Wednesdays, when that's not playing, we have On the Mark, which is my program. So we'll catch you next Wednesday. Thanks for joining us.